Okay, so I wanted to do a quick video on some of the testing I've been doing with Stalker 2 Update 2.0. My performance is already really good anyway, and the Update 2.0 does increase performance and visual quality, and performance increases by up to about 30% for most people in many areas of the game, and stutters and things are vastly reduced as well, but there's always room for improvement, and especially in terms of how frame panning is. Screen recording, whether it's full screen or application based, it doesn't always capture the smoothness. So I'm recording at 4K 60 FPS. That should give you a much better representation of what I'm seeing in front of me compared to the video capture that happens with OBS or Nvidia Shadowplay or whatever. So hence why it's recording off screen and doing it via this way. But the principle is still the same, and it gives you a better idea or a better gist. So what I am using is DLSS Enabler. Now I will put a link to this in the description below, but it's a free mod download. And when you do download it, I'll just go ahead and do that now. And download the manual version. It is just one single DLL file that is there. And if I just extract that to the desktop, you can see there, that is just one DLL file. And the idea of it is you copy it into your game's install folder. So in terms of Stalker 2, that will be going to Steam, browse local game files, go to the Stalker 2 folder, into binaries, into Win64 because it's Unreal Engine 5. And you want to put the version.dll file that you downloaded into the game directory where the Stalker's main executable is. And for Unreal Engine 5 games, it's always the exe file that ends in shipping.exe. So in this case, Stalker Win64 shipping.exe. And I've already got my DLL file there. So that's it. That's all you have to do. Nothing else needs to be done. Then we close all these folders down, minimize the browser window, and load up the game. But before I do that, I do want to check one thing, or actually PSA one thing as well. So I'm on a OLED display, QD OLED, and it's 240 Hertz. Now, because of this model of display, there is a VRR flicker, variable refresh rate flicker, and that is quite common on many QD OLEDs. It happens when you have a game where there are dark scenes and there's a lot of shadow back and forth. And because the frame pacing on Unreal Engine 5 especially isn't as smooth as it could be, that results in flickering that is perceptible to some people. Not everyone, but some people. I'm one of those people. So I choose to have VRR or Gsync turned off. In favor with, I opt to use a frame rate cap below the refresh rate. So that's the best way to do it, at least from what I found. Other people may have other ways of doing it, but for me, that's resulted in really good performance, even up to multi-frame gen 4x, because that's what DLSS Enabler enables. It allows you to use up to 6x, depending on if the game supports it or not, but on Stalker 2, it's up to 4x. So I'm just going to load up the game, and we can run through exactly what that looks like. Now you'll see that the mod has worked because you've got the optiscaler wording at the bottom saying it's successfully loaded, and that's a good sign. Okay, so before I load into the game, I'll show you the settings that I'm using first. Now, this is a 4090 that I'm using, so I am playing at 4K. So everything is presetted to epic, motion blur and things like that are off. Depth of field is epic, I like it sometimes. I am using DLSS quality. Sharpness is set to 20%. Frame generation is currently set to 4x, but I'm going to drop it to 2x later, and everything else is on epic. Under display, we've got full screen borderless, field of view 100, and frame rate cap. In game, I'm not using it because I don't really need to, since we're using RTSS anyway, and I can toggle that on and off on the fly, so I don't need to go into settings to change this every time. So I'm happy with all of those, and I'm just going to continue the game. So I'm going to just drop the frame gen or multi-frame gen down to 0 at the moment. So I'll turn it off. And it just takes a moment to think. So this is the baseline performance that I get in this game. So 94, 96, 99, so 90 plus FPS with just DLSS quality at 4K output, and it is really smooth. And you can see there from the top left the Optiscaler or the DLSS Enabler stats overlay. I need to get out of here because I'm being shot at. So this is what it looks like with just 2x, no X, so frame gen is off, just upscaling with DLSS quality, and it looks great. It runs great, there's no real performance issues, and I'll be happy with that. But as you can hear, probably the 4090's fans are quite loud because the GPU is being hammered a bit. So it is in 97, 98, it is fluctuating between 99 and 97% utilization. So I want to lower that a bit. So I could do that two ways without frame gen. I could cap the frame rate lower. So if I go to RTSS right now, I have got it set to 120 FPS currently. So if I set that to, let's say, 75 FPS and go back into the game, instantly my frame rate's capped now at 75 FPS, and the GPU utilization has gone to 88%, 99%. So as the thermals stabilize, the fan speed of the GPU will also stabilize and become quieter. So I kind of like this for a lot of games because it means you can have a quieter gaming experience if you're not gaming on a headphone, and enjoy a cooler running temperature coming out of your PC, which is quite useful in this heat wave if you don't have AC. But what I'm going to do is put it back onto 120 FPS in RTSS and go back into the game. So we're now back at what the max game can manage on the 4090, which is 90 plus FPS. So it's not quite hitting my cap. So if I wanted to hit the cap, I'd need to enable frame gen, which I'm going to do there, and we'll put it at 2x. And apply. So there we go. So now we're able to hit our 120 FPS cap, which is showing up there. And I'll turn off RTSS overlay. So we can see there 120 FPS, average is 120 FPS. So really good frame times, really good performance on those reflex numbers as well. So I'll present milliseconds 1.5, render queue is 10 milliseconds, 15 milliseconds, and our overall reflex whole frame latency is 24, 25 milliseconds. So we're still below the 30 millisecond target, which is universally accepted as you want to be hitting no more than 30 milliseconds in order to not feel perceived input latency from mouse movement and so on. So this feels really, you can twitch move and still get really good performance out of it. And as you can see from the frame performance, that it is very smooth. Now my mouse is set to 2000 polling hertz, so that too is very smooth. So if I now go into settings and enable 4x, which is multi-frame gen, how does that look? We do get the option for 3x as well, but we'll go to 4x. And yes, still very, very smooth. But we are now hitting reflex timing whole frame range of 35, 34 milliseconds. So slightly above what we desirably want And I can tell that there is slightly more floaty feel to the mouse movement, just because we are above 30 milliseconds for the whole frame latency. Now, does that change if I set the global driver cap back on? I'm not sure, so let's try that. So it's worth keeping that figure in mind. With 4x frame gen enabled, or multi-frame gen enabled with DLSS Enabler, we're at 34, 33, spiking up to 37 milliseconds for the whole frame. So I'm going to exit the game. Actually, first what I'll do is I'll disable frame gen, or drop back to 2x. So we're going to quit the game. Now, the reason I mentioned those bits at the start for what to enable in the driver and so on was based on the research I did yesterday and some of the things I read as well. So I followed those guidelines and I tested a bit as well, and that's what I found. So I've just noticed previously my whole frame latency was 25 milliseconds with the driver global cap set in the Nvidia driver. So now that I've turned that off, it's showing 35 to 37 milliseconds, or between 34 and 37, so that's slightly higher than what I was expecting. So let's put that to the test, because I'm learning this in real time now with you guys. So I'm going to go into NV app, and I'm not going to change anything in RTSS, so I'll minimize that and leave that as is. And I'll go back to what I used to have in the past. So max frame rate in the Nvidia driver, I'm going to set that to 237 FPS. And then click apply. So that's how I used to have it. Nothing else has changed. So my Gsync and Vsync are still off, how it always used to be. The only thing I changed last night was max frame rate. So that's now back to 237. So let's go back into Stalker and see if that results in the whole frame latency milliseconds to be 10 milliseconds lower than what it was just now. So it should be back to around 25 milliseconds. Okay, so I'm back into the game, loading up. Again, this is with the Nvidia driver max frame rate cap global set to 237 FPS. And we are at 2x frame gen still. Okay, so I'll turn off RTSS. I'll turn on DLSS Enabler's stats overlay. So we're just going to enable 4x multi-frame gen again. So we're at 2x a moment ago. GPU fans in the menu do spool up because frame gen is not active when you're in the game's menus. As soon as I go back into the game, frame gen re-enables. And let's see what the frame time is looking like now. Okay, so with 4x frame gen enabled, we are back up to 34, 35, 37. It has spikes at 41 there, so it looks like the issue, the insertion of more latency is due to using 4x frame gen. It is still smooth, but I can still feel slightly more motion latency for the mouse input when I'm moving the camera around compared to 2x. So if I go back down to 2x and test something quickly. So that's 2x frame gen back enabled. So this is just normal DLSS frame gen. And yeah, now it feels just like not using frame gen at all, so it is instant. And that is due to the frame time, the whole frame time, going back down to 25, 24 milliseconds. Let's let these guys fight. So yeah, best approach is stick to 2x on a 40 series RTX GPU or a GPU that can handle 2x effectively. Okay, that's that.